This is the last video of the year 2023. I cannot believe it. A whole year has passed, and YouTube-wise, I can tell for sure that I will remember this year as something like a milestone for me personally. But of course, this video will also have, as usual, some mystery story, and today we're looking into an UFO mystery. And also at the end of the video, I'm gonna look a little bit back on the previous year for me on this YouTube channel. I have also some exciting news, so I hope you're gonna stick around with me. But first, as always, UFO story. For today's story, we're gonna move to Sweden, to a place called Gita. I hope I pronounced it correctly. If not, I do apologize for that. You do know that I have some problems with that. And today's story is going to take place in the year 1976 in January, which is kind of a little bit after the New Year's. The winter of 1976 in Gittorp is something locals will probably remember and talk about forever. Gittorp, the small mining community a few miles north from Örebro, for a couple of weeks turned into a tourist attraction. People from different places came to see the wonder with their own eyes. So what was the wonder and what happened there? Let's start from the beginning. For more than 100 years, Gittorp community was very much dependent from explosives factory that belonged to Nitro Nobel company. Today, the factory has changed its name and belongs to an Australian company. Now it's called Orica Sweden AB, but in the year 1976, when the story will take place, the company all belonged to Sweden, and at around 1,000 people were working there. And now our story begins on January 21st at around 9 p.m. in the evening. Alan Jonsson, he's gonna be like the main character of today's story. So on that evening, at that time, he was taking his car for the usual 3-hour ride to the Gittorp factory. Alan parked his car by the factory, passed the guards, and just went on to the factory to work. There was no sign that this evening is going to be somewhat like different from the usual ones. It was a pleasant winter evening, and at around midnight, the temperatures dropped down to as low as 16 degrees below zero, and I'm talking Celsius. So it was quite cold. His job was to oversee operations at an acid dentification plant. The facility was close to the Vikarn lake shore, and from the break room in the factory, Alan could look over the Vikarn lake whenever he wanted. When Alan came out of his third inspection of that evening, it was already 10:25 p.m. As usual, he was just enjoying the view over the lake, but this time there was something more than just the pure nature scenery. What he saw there over the lake was like a line of lights or a line of little windows horizontally. And when he started to move towards the lake a little bit, he saw the outline of the object, and it was quite large. So basically like a large object with little windows or little lights. And he had never seen something like this before in his life in that area. There was nothing that could make this light show in the middle of a lake. Like from the factory, the lights were too far to create this light show. And also like it could not be like a moon reflection, because on that night the moon was not so much visible. So there was no other source that could create this like light line or create this visual of something like hovering over the lake. As Alan's eyes started to adjust to the dark, he started to see more clearly what it was. So it seems like this object was literally standing on the ice of the lake. And as I said, he was like slowly approaching the object. And at one point he was like 100 meters away from this object. And he saw, as he said afterwards, that this object resembled somewhat like a round cheese shape. Now he could see that the line of the lights or little windows indeed resembled little windows. And there was a light, like white yellow light coming out of them. And what was weird, that this light didn't reflect on the ice of the lake. And Alan afterwards remembered that there could be around 12 to 15 these windows or openings on this object. Now, but Alan, of course, was on duty, so he had to return back to his factory to like oversee the things that are happening there. But during his shift, he was coming out constantly, like almost every hour, just to check if the thing that he saw there is still there. And it was still there, looking the same, just standing on the same spot with all these lights. The last time that Alan saw this object was around 3 a.m. in the morning. When he came out at 4 a.m., it had already disappeared. Alan was like a typical Scandinavian guy. He was quite humble, so he decided that he's gonna keep this event a secret. He didn't tell anything to his co-workers, family, or friends. He was also afraid that if he tells them anything, they're just gonna laugh at him or maybe doubt his mental health. The next shift for Alan was in the next day, which was January 22nd, and during his shift, as he did before, he was coming out almost every hour just to take a look on the lake because maybe this object had returned. He wanted just to make sure that he saw what he saw, but unfortunately, nothing appeared. And this made him doubt that he actually saw something the previous day. Maybe his mind was just playing games with him. He started even to doubt the things that he saw the day before and tried to forget this. But very soon, Alan had to change his mind again. You see, his next shift was on January 26th, and he had an afternoon shift, which started at 1 p.m. And before he went to the factory, he decided that he's gonna take a walk on the lake just to make sure that everything's okay there. So he walks on the ice, and at one point he stops and he's surprised because he sees that there is a strange mark in the middle of a lake on the ice. Alan stands there for a while, a little bit in shock, because he starts to realize that maybe this mark in the middle of the ice actually is related to that thing that he saw on that night, because this mark is exactly on the same spot where he saw this object. Alan could not stand the mental strain anymore. He thought I really need to tell this story to somebody, otherwise I'm just gonna go crazy. So he decides that during the shift, he's gonna tell this story to a couple of his colleagues. And to his surprise, nobody actually laughed. But unfortunately, this story started to spread among the other factory workers, and all of them started to take it really seriously. And as you know, rumors spread like wildfire. And with every second person telling the story to another person, probably the story got some more layers, maybe some things that didn't even happen. And this story left factory, went from one home to another home, from one community to another community. And soon after, there were people flocking to Gita, wanting to see this mysterious ring on the ice that was related to that crazy story with their own eyes. Gita now had become a real tourist attraction, and all of this made Alan's life into a real hell. As I told you, he was a humble man. He didn't want to tell this story at the first place. He just wanted to tell somebody so that he wouldn't feel like he's going crazy, And now all these people coming to Gita, they wanted to talk to him because he was the main source of this crazy story about this ring and these lights and everything. And Alan was really sad. He didn't feel very good about this. For Alan Jonsson, the incident became a heavy burden to bear. When the freelance journalist Jan Ove Sundberg wrote about him in Hemmets Journal on April the 8th, 1976, Alan Jonsson was very upset. He absolutely did not want his name included in the article. He hated to see his photo and his name together with a headline, "I saw an unknown circular craft land in the middle of the night." Alan's daughter Birgit recalls that her father was really sad during that time, and he felt really horrible. And I quote his daughter, "Dad never talked to us about what happened. He didn't want to say anything about it. He believed that what he had seen on that night was not funny. I think he was afraid of it too." As the incident started to become very popular, there were loud headlines and there were really interesting articles about that event. This story started to draw attention also of UFO Sweden, the organization that I'm mentioning quite a lot when I'm discussing UFO cases from Sweden. So the representatives of this organization, they arrived to Gittorp and had a 2-day investigation where they investigated this ring and also were talking to the people who might have also seen something. And what is the most important thing, they also managed to approach Alan. And so the investigators, they also investigated the ring on the lake. So it looked really big. It was around 40 meters in a diameter, and around this ring, it looked like there were somewhat like rays coming out, and those were around 2.5 meters long. But the most remarkable part of all of this like ring was the center of it. So there were like large ice crystals, and they were really thin, and they were like standing upwards like on top of the ice. The size of the crystals closest to the center was about 15 centimeters, while the crystals took on an increasingly finer structure the further from the center they had formed. At the far end, they were only 3 to 4 centimeters high. The largest crystals were within a circular area about 5 meters in diameter. These crystals were as thin as sheets of glass, with a thickness of about 2 millimeters. Outside the imprint, the thickness of the ice was 42 centimeters, while in the center it was only 26 centimeters. UFO Sweden investigators certainly were astonished by how this ring and the crystals and everything looked on this lake. However, at the end of the day, they were more like leaning towards the idea that maybe there could be some kind of like natural or reasonable explanation to what they're looking at right now. They didn't have the answer at that moment, but they felt like this maybe was not really a UFO, as most of the people most probably were already suspecting. However, later it was discovered that maybe Alan was not the only one who saw something in the sky over the lake on that evening. So there was a guy who came forward, and he said that at around 6:30 p.m. he and his wife were enjoying a nice evening walk. And then they noticed that there was like a steady red light in the sky over Lake Viken. This light then disappeared and then came back, and they recalled that they felt like it's quite strange since this light was like standing very still over the lake afterwards. Exactly how Alan was describing his thing on the lake. So when this couple returned home, they started to discuss the thing that they saw in the sky, and they thought like maybe, yeah, it was like a helicopter just standing there or flying over. But then again, the light was steady, and on helicopters it's like flickering. So not really like helicopter, so they were quite confused. And they also recall that this thing was literally standing still over the lake and never approaching the nitro factory. People in Gittorp and also like different experts had different opinions about this event. Part of them wanted to believe that this is something like extraterrestrial, extraordinary, mysterious, like for example an alien ship had landed on the ice. The other part of them strongly believe that there is an explanation, and maybe this explanation is related to something like natural. There were also some rumors about the fact that on the night when Alan saw this object over the lake, there had been some power supply problems in the area. And as we all know, these UFO stories are usually related to some power supply problems. However, when this question was investigated, it became apparent that this was simply a rumor and there were no problems with power supply in that area on that night. So this case remained like this for many years. Some people wanted to believe in extraterrestrial, some people wanted to believe that this can be explained, but still like there was no like middle, like there was no real explanation to what we should believe now. This changed in the middle of April of the year 2006. So yeah, so many years after the event actually took place. And UFO Sweden was reached out by a former helicopter pilot who was like active during the 70s. And his name was Ingmar Schillström. I probably mispronounced the surname. And he wrote in his letter that he recalls crossing the lake in January of the year 1976. So in the letter he said that in one of his old logbooks he found a confirmation that he actually was taking one of his like apprentices, his students, to practice over the Lake Viken, and it literally happened in the evening of January 21st, 1976, and that was the exact time and exact date when Alan saw his thing over the lake. When I got over the lake area at Gittorp, I ordered the student to make a landing on the snow-covered ice. Once down on the ice surface, we started various hoovering exercises, forward, backward, sideways, with turns around, said the pilot. Now, how about the lights that they saw? The pilot now explained that his helicopter had a red light on the left side of the helicopter and a green light on the right side. The pilot also explained that when they were doing these exercises, the snow of that was like lying on the surface of the ice was just like stirred around and creating like a little snowstorm, and from the distance it might look like there's something like a fireworks or more than just a couple of lights. So maybe that would explain why Alan said that he saw many lights like in a line. And at the end, the pilot said that once they were finished with this exercise, they simply flew away to their base. So they went away, and probably Alan came out and realized that this object had already left this place. So there's a possibility that indeed that was a helicopter. But I don't know, how can you explain the crystals in the ice ring? I don't know, maybe it can be explained also with the helicopter. However, I found another explanation that also seems quite legit, and let me tell you. So there is a possibility that this ring and the crystals were actually created by explosions of methane collected in pockets on the bottom of the lake. And in fact, a large number of the lakes in Sweden can form this methane gas in the bottom of those lakes. And many people have witnessed, and they cannot explain it. And afterwards, somebody explains them that this is like a natural thing that can happen. And sometimes even like this methane gas, like explosion, can also create like a hole. So it looks pretty extraordinary, and some people might just confuse it with something like extraterrestrial, and maybe this ring could also be somewhat explained with this like methane gas explosion. And now, to sum up this story, what can we conclude? First of all, this is an obvious example of how a little story can be turned into something really big very quickly, like to an extent that people are flocking to the place to see the scene themselves and start spreading the rumors that maybe an alien craft was landing on this ice of the lake, not even considering a possibility that this can be explained with something like normal from nature or maybe something else. I don't know. What do I think about the helicopter? I give it like solid 90% that this was the helicopter that he saw there, although I still have some questions. Like Alan saw cheese, like round cheese-shaped object, but helicopter doesn't resemble like cheese-shaped, like round object. However, maybe the thing that he considered to be round cheese was the propeller, the movement of it. I don't know. This could be investigated a little bit further. I also believe that this could be also somewhat related to this methane gas explosion. But again, I would love to like read more specific details. How could this have appeared if that's the case, of course. And again, I will be repeating as always these old cases. Like if the people during those times had the tools like to do the scientific tests as we can do now, probably this case would have been solved in like this. But, you know, we have what we have, and we have just the story. But for Alan Jonsson, the story actually never ended. He had this this followed him throughout his life. And in his room, they found a typewritten note that he wrote 10 days after he saw this thing on the lake. And on this note, he summed up all of his feelings. And I quote, "Is it a landing site of a spacecraft? Was that a spacecraft I observed? I want to believe that this was not the case, but I search and do not get the definite theory, but only doubts about the whole thing." On February 21st, year 1993, Alan Jonsson died without receiving a proper explanation about the thing that he saw there. He never really solved the greatest mystery of his life, which is kind of sad. And at the end of it, like, he really was just a humble man who wanted to stay at home with his family and live normal life. and he received all of this attention and he wasn't really happy about it. And this is it, my friends. Let me know your thoughts about this story. I will be very happy to read those in the comments section. As always, let's discuss this. I'm always happy to read your comments, reply to them. And yeah, let's just move to the other part of this video. As promised, I'm just gonna look a bit back to the previous year, the year 2023 on my channel, and also give you some news. And so the things that I wanted to tell you is that I am very grateful to have each of you as a subscriber to my channel. And if by some kind of accident you are a new person on my channel here, welcome, do subscribe. We have a very interesting community here, and I'm telling, I think, quite interesting stories here. Anyways, I remember that at the beginning of this year, I told myself that I really dream of having 1,000 subscribers. And if you look at the numbers of my channel, I have more than 2,000 of you watching me regularly, which makes me so happy. And again, I'm so grateful. I have reached my goal like 200%, and I hope from this point, all of this just goes up. And I also have some news. I am finally accepted as YouTube Partner Program member, which means that I can literally start to earn a bit. And you can also support me by pressing this little dollar sign. And this would really help me out in many ways and also motivate me even more to create these videos for you guys. But also looking back at the previous year, I also feel like this was the perfect timing of me becoming monetized on YouTube channel. Because firstly, finally, I have crystal clear understanding of what kind of videos and what kind of format I am going to have on my channel, like these mystery, Scandinavian, not only lately. I now have a clear vision. How am I going to continue with this? So I think it just makes sense that finally I am monetized with this clear mindset about my YouTube channel. And secondly, there was another important thing that kind of pushed forward my channel. And it was the invitation that I received from Jay Dyer to participate in his live stream on YouTube. And this kind of turned the attention of many people to my existence on YouTube channel, and the number of subscribers just went up and more people started to discover me, including people from the US, like those people I have never had on my channel before. And I will be always grateful for that live stream. I will always be grateful to Jay for inviting me. And if you're watching, Happy New Year. And I guess this invitation to this live stream changed a lot for me personally, because that was the moment when I thought I might quit my channel, because I was about to give up. And thirdly, which is not really like a YouTube thing, but I've been thinking about it quite a while, and I've realized that many people do not really have time just to sit and look at me telling a story, and they would prefer, let's say, put their headphones on and listen to those stories. So I have started to work on my podcast, and all of the stories, that most interesting ones that I have been telling you here, I will be recording in a form of a podcast and sharing it. You will get the details on my community section on the YouTube channel, and you will learn about this further in the new year. But I'm really working on it, and I hope it works out. This is another reason just to support me, and I will try to do my best also to have a podcast. Of course, it gets harder and harder because I have changed also my job position. Now I have more duties, more responsibilities, but I will still not leave my YouTube channel behind. Now that I have you all, now that everything's going upwards, And on this happy note, in this last video on my channel from 2023, I just wanted all you to wish Merry Christmas. Spend some quality time with yourself, with your family, with your loved ones. Share some love with some people. Do some good deeds. We really need some love in this world at the moment. And for the New Year's, have a blast with a nice party. And if you don't like parties, may the New Year celebration be the way you want it. I wish you a lot of success, good health, happiness, lots of love to give and receive, and see you in the year 2024. Happy New Year!